So hi everyone, welcome back to another lockdown edition of the AmBIssadors. I'm Lo,
And I'm Vaneet.
and we are now over 100 days in lockdown. So we were really hoping to have been able to film together at this point, but unfortunately not yet. So a few more Zoom episodes probably coming up for you guys, and then hopefully maybe we'll be able to see each other come, I don't know, August, September, who knows?
Hopefully, we can have like a fun bi party in September.
Oh, I'd love that. It is Bi Pride Month.
Exactly.
Coronavirus could be the ultimate bi ally and lift for September for us to be reunited.
Imagine we get a vaccine just in time for bi week, and it's just
Oh,
like, I'm doing it for the bis.
dreamy. So speaking of, well, things that are comparable to viruses, today we're talking about discourse again.
Oh my god. Is it just me, or does it feel like we're getting a discourse every week at this point?
I think it's because people are bored and frustrated in lockdown that they're discoursing.
They're like, it's Pride Month. How can I harm bisexual people? Because that's what Pride Month's all about.
We've had like the Venn diagram of like people always go a little bit crazy during Pride Month, and then with lockdown, it's like come together into super discourse. So that's what we've been dealing with this week, right? Do you want to give like an overview of what happened?
Right, yeah. So the thing that happened a few days ago yesterday from filming, but a few days ago from when this comes out, is the discourse that we've discussed in the past, actually, about the use of slurs came up again. Normally, the discourse tends to revolve around the D slur, but this time it also included the F slur. Now, I don't want to say the slurs, but I am going to say them just so people are aware. So, trigger warning. The slurs are fag and dyke for people who don't know these slurs. And this came up again, and this tweet went quite viral. I think when I caught it, it had about 20,000 likes and quite a few thousand retweets. And I caught it from a friend who was calling it out. And I spun up the thread of sort of stuff that we've discussed in the past of why we can use these slurs, why it's okay for bisexual people to use these slurs. So I thought we might as well start there and maybe give a quick summary of why it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll put in a link to our other video where we talk about this, but basically, I think you summed it up really well. You said that these words aren't about exclusive attraction to the same gender, which is what most people claim. They're about othering the person that they're hurled at, and they're about othering you because you're not straight.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this hundreds of times. I've been called these slurs while I've been out with my partner. You've been called these slurs. People don't stop to check how you identify. They just see you out with your same gender partner, or they see you out as a like gender non-conforming person and hurl these slurs at you. So what I find most harmful is the idea that when I'm experiencing homophobia, it's like not about me, and I can't claim that experience as my own because people claim that, you know, it's misdirected homophobia. Like when people are like throwing stuff at me and swearing at me and harassing me, it doesn't feel misdirected. It feels like I'm being threatened and harassed, which I am. And so the idea that I can't then reclaim anything about that situation, and that actually like I'm like a stand-in for in that situation rather than it actually happening to me, I think it's just quite painful because it removes a lot of your like autonomy and your like claim of your own experiences.
Yeah, I find the idea of misdirected homophobia incredibly bizarre because, you know, if you maybe if you were actually straight and you said, "Oh, I'm straight," maybe that would change things. But you know, if they see you as other, they're still going to other you. But if you tell them you're bisexual, they will just say, and they'll just reiterate the slur, be like, "Yeah, I said what I said." Like, to them, there's no difference, and it's not misdirected homophobia. It's just bi-erasure and homophobia, right? It's just two things at once.
Yeah.
And it's weird that people don't see it like that. They think, oh, they're only doing it because they think you're this. And I'm like, yeah, they think I'm this. And even if I tell them I'm bi, that doesn't change how they think of me. That doesn't change how they see me. So we keep saying it to them. It's like if they say this slur to us and we go, "Oh, I'm actually bi," I'm not going to go, "Oh, I'm sorry. Here's a crumpet. Here's something to apologize for." Like it won't change their opinion of that. And so I find it really strange. But the thing that also seems to come up is, and we've discussed this before with Mel, about history. And a lot of people bring up history into it. And the second they do, they show themselves as not knowing a single thing about queer history at all. So we discussed this on the episode with Mel and even on the Discourse episode. But for people who don't understand the history, historically, we didn't have an LGBTQ plus community. That was never what it was really called. It was called lesbian and gay. And you will see that throughout everything. You will see that in terms of the mental health support services. You will see that in our community centres. You will see that in research. It will always be called lesbian and gay. And so bisexual people moved in those communities and they didn't use the word bisexual. And the reason they didn't is because of the incredible amounts of biphobia. Because the second they did, they got kind of akin to what we're still getting. Like, it's lesser, but it's still there. It's still the same. Yeah, it's the same level. It's the same thoughts that come up again and again.
I think as well, when you talk about language, often I saw a very funny tweet that was like, these young exclusionists put historical in front of what they're saying and think it's like a free pass to say anything, which I thought was hilarious. Because if you go back further, there was no like differentiation between people being bi or gay up until like last century. Maybe like from my research, it seems to be like the end of the 1800s that started to become differentiated. But like before then, people weren't even called like lesbian or gay. You were a sodomite or a queer or a tribade if you were a woman. And it wasn't something you were, it was like something you did. And that's like the time where these slurs came from a time where there wasn't any differentiation, even sometimes between whether you were like gay as we now know gay or trans as we now know trans. Like all of it was just seen as being a queer, you know? And so the idea that homophobes now don't just see us all like that still in a way, or aren't using words that come from that time, that they care about our individual identities. It's just absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah. And I think we've had this discussion before as well about the lesbian separatist movement and how before that, lesbian was never seen as a thing that you were, but a thing that you did. And it was an attraction to women, but it was never claimed as an exclusive attraction. And in fact, during this discourse, someone linked me to a really great image which showed lesbians. And it was lesbians where it was full attraction, half and half. Like, it was obviously problematic in its own way, but it was trying to show the different forms of lesbian. And there was an image of what we now call bi in this different forms of lesbian. And so when people keep saying historically, it's like, you don't understand history. Please pick up a queer book. You have a library. I'm sure there's one there somewhere. eBay is there. Google is your friend. You will find a lot of resources.
That's our slogan, I think, for this channel.
Google is your friend. Especially when you're like, they're tweeting, it's like Twitter for iPhone, Twitter for Android. I'm like, it's literally an app away. Please just click on the other app instead. Log off. Just log off.
Just go to home screen, Google.
Yeah.
So obviously you and I have lived through so many discourses. This is just a new iteration in what is an eternal discourse, I think. Because I remember this going on in like 2010s, Tumblr, Twitter a few years ago. We're always living through it. How do you cope with it? What are your like tips and tricks?
So I'm really bad at coping with it. I think I get too wrapped up in the discourse. Like we always say, bisexuals are fueled by spite and anger. And I'm fueled by my spite and anger, and I just keep going. And it's really hard to switch off from it. But I think it's really important to come to a point where you're like, I've said what I've said. all of what I've said is there, and you can go and read it, and I don't need to keep reiterating myself. I think it's difficult because we do say to people, like, yeah, you obviously need to work through these issues and you need to talk people down and you need to explain it to people. But I think there is a line where people are going to approach that conversation and they're not going to approach it with a positive aspect. They're going to immediately call you out or laugh at you, or in my case, I get called misogynist or lesbophobe a lot.
I get called that too, don't worry.
Yeah. So it's like you can't, you at that point you realize that you can't have that discussion with someone. You really cannot break it down for them because they're not approaching it in a way where they want it broken down. They're not interested. They just want to fight you. And at that point you need to just go, well, block button, mute button, stuff like that.
I recently on Twitter got called multiple times a lesbophobe for sharing a poem about a woman, and the poem was written in 1991 and published in 1995, the year that I was born. And I put that in the tweet saying, here's a poem from the year that I was born. And it was about a woman who used the label bi and lesbian. And I had multiple people commenting, like calling me like a lesbophobe, telling me to like fuck off, all this stuff. And I was like, do you think I wrote this? Do you think I wrote this the year I was born and got it published? Like, this obviously isn't my poem.
I mean, if you did, you are an even better writer than I thought. If you like came out of the womb and had a poem already written in hand.
I was just like, please read the original text. I was not alive when this was written. So I think that's what you mean when you say like a lot of people don't want to engage with you in good faith. Those people didn't want to have a discussion with me about that historical poem and what it means for our community. They just wanted to yell at someone on the internet, and that person was me that day.
Yeah, and I think at that point it's really important to go, there is nothing I can really say to this person to actually teach them. There's nothing I can actually say to have a discussion and to make them see my point of view, because they don't actually want that from you. They just want to label you a bigot and file you away. That's all they want.
I think as well it's a good time for allies to step in, right? For like our lesbian, gay, trans, asexual allies to step in and be like, hey, you're not actually protecting our community by harassing bi people or telling bi people what they can and can't say. Leave them alone at this point. I think it's, and I think we're seeing more of that, but it's something I would definitely like to see, an upward trend of some like more visible lesbian and gay people standing up for bi inclusion and for just for bi people in general. Like, we're so tired of this.
Yeah, I think I tweeted that as well, as when that discourse came and my notifications were completely unhinged. I tweeted out and was just like, people who've been following me, all my non-bi, non-pan, and monosexual friends, mutuals, followers, you've seen how many times I've had to share something like this. Please understand how exhausted we are. Please understand how exclusionary this is. And please understand that you need to be allies, because I think a lot of people, quite rightly so, understand why we need trans allyship. And I think that's great. And I think a lot of people now are waking up to why we need to be better allies to Black people and to people of colour. But I don't think a lot of people have yet clicked on communities like bisexual, asexual, intersex, and the importance of standing up for these people. They don't understand just how difficult it is, despite the fact that we don't shut up about how difficult it is.
Something I see a lot on that note is people like retweeting stuff or just tweeting in general or posting in general, saying that like bisexuals and asexuals want to be oppressed, which is just a way of like dismissing the actual oppression and marginalization that we face. Whilst like, I think, especially for like bi and ace communities, we're seen as very much a fair game for mocking and discourse and like jokes in a way that like people who make jokes about bi communities and ace communities wouldn't make those same jokes about like gay men or lesbians because they can see that that's homophobic, but for them it's fine to make that joke about bi people and ace people because they don't take biphobia or aphobia seriously.
Yeah.
And that's when like allies need to step in and be like, oh, you wouldn't make this joke about lesbians, so like don't make it about bi people, because as we've shared before in our previous videos, like it does have an effect on bi people's mental health and well-being when you're constantly like invalidated.
Yeah, definitely. I think a really important thing to do sometimes is, instead of fighting these people or calling it out, just turn it into a positive spin. I mean, that is exactly how my hashtag bisexual men exist started. And I did start one yesterday, which I don't think it's trending, and I'm not really paying attention to it, but I started saying hashtag bifag. And I've changed my bio on Twitter to bifag. And like, sometimes that's a better way to do it. They'll be like, oh, you can't say the S there. I'll be like, anyway, hi, I'm a bifag, and just share a picture of yourself and be like, we out here, and just completely ignore what they're saying. And sometimes just tackling it in a positive way can be so much better for you. It can feel so much nicer, because it can be really exhausting to engage in that anger and fight these people. As important as it can be to educate and have that educational moment, sometimes it's just like, I can't deal with it anymore.
For me, I usually engage with it in a way that's not aimed at the people who are attacking bi people, because let's be honest, that's what like Discourse is, but in a way that's meant to be uplifting and positive for bi people. So I'll respond to it, or write a post or a thread or whatever with some information or with like some uplifting quotes. I have a thread going that's just like, good morning to bi butch women, good morning to bi femmes, just to, as you said, like annoy discourses and also provide a little bit of positivity. So that's how I engage with it. And then once I've done that, I just kind of leave it and walk away. Because I used to have a real problem with something called digital self-harm, which is when you seek out material that you know is going to like upset or trigger you as like a self-harming method. So I had a really big problem with that a few years ago. And for me, like learning about what digital self-harm was like a really big step in being able to I don't want to say fight that, but like handle that within myself. So I guess, if anyone is having problems with like not being able to step away from discourse, or like not being able to step away from like all these negative posts about yourself, because especially if you're like bi or ace or trans, there's so much negativity out there to find. Like when I went to find materials that I knew was going to upset me, like I would often go to like Reddit threads by lesbians about how much they like hate bi women, because for me that was more harmful than like threads by straight men about how much they hate bi women, because when it's your own community, they're meant to be there for you. But yeah, like reading and learning about digital self-harm and some techniques to like stop engaging in it was really, really good. And for me that meant like going cold turkey for a while. I had to delete a lot of apps off my phone, but eventually like I've got to a place where I can now engage in the conversation without it having like a huge effect on my well-being.
Yeah, and I think that is really important, and I think it's really important to remember that you do not need to engage in the discourse. You like that post where they were saying you can't say the D or F slur. I chose to engage in it, but I could have just blocked, and it's okay to just block. It's okay to do that. It's okay to not be the arbiter and be the person who has to be out there and stand on the soapbox and explain it all and educate everyone. Like, that's not your duty as a bisexual person. Your duty as a bisexual person is to just exist as a bisexual person.
Muting like words, muting accounts, that's my favorite function on every social media. I have the most petty words muted because I'm like, I don't want to see this conversation anymore. I have Ariana Grande muted. Just like every word about Ariana Grande muted. I don't want to hear about it. Yeah. And that's from when everyone was like discoursing about whether she was bi last year. Yeah. I have Rita Ora muted for the same reason. And if we were to go through my muted accounts list on Twitter, it's everyone. Even if I haven't interacted with someone, if I see a tweet and I go on their profile and they look sus, they look like they could say something, at some point I'll mute them, I'll block them. I'm preemptively blocking everyone. So
I think it's also really important to filter out your followers as well. I think not a lot of people really look at the people that they're following and they just sort of let them sit there. And I think it's really important to have clear outs every now and then. It's really important. Like what I've started doing is I've stopped following people. Like people who will follow me, I won't follow back until I see them engage positively in the different aspects of things that I tweet, or I see something really positive in their bio. I can tell that maybe they're in an intersection, so I know that they'll probably understand things better. Because the thing that I will notice is I might sort of follow people because I'll be like, oh yeah, fellow bisexual person, and then they don't engage positively with race issues. And that's really frustrating for me. And vice versa as well. I may engage with someone who's like, oh, they're a queer person of colour, but they're not bi, they may be biphobic or transphobic. And I'm like, well, no thank you. So I think it's really important to be careful when you're following and stuff as well.
I don't know if you have this as well, but in Twitter settings, I have notifications from people I don't follow turned off. So if I go onto the tweet, I can see all the replies, but I don't get in my notifications tweets from people I'm not following. So that's also been a really great way for me to filter out a lot of the shit that I get as an openly bi woman on the internet. So I definitely recommend doing that.
It's difficult because there's some people which I like engaging with when they reply to me, but I don't necessarily follow them, mainly because sometimes the stuff that they tweet might be like X-rated or something like that. So I don't really want that content in my feed, but I want to chat with them when they reply to me. So it's difficult, and I definitely recommend that if you are getting discourse and it is frustrating you, that's definitely a prime time to like switch it on. Like it's something you can switch on and off. So it's you're getting the discourse, be like, cool, I'm just gonna put that on so I don't have to deal with that. And I think it's a really good way to like there's like quality filters and stuff as well. It's just like switch all of it on.
All of those on.
And you just get rid of like a lot of the garbage.
Quality filters on that sometimes people will like send me one of my own tweets in my DMs or like link to it, and the quality filter will like block out my own tweet because I've tweeted something that doesn't meet one of my quality filters. Like that's how I have to be on the internet. Like I have to really like, I know we talk about getting out of your social media bubble, but my social media bubble is so curated because why wouldn't it be? It's my space. If I don't want to hear from people, if I don't want to hear about topics, I have it all turned off, all muted.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important as a marginalized person to protect yourself in these spaces because online spaces can be such a complete mess. It's such a shit show at times. And I think it's really important to make sure that you can navigate that space without feeling like you're being bullied or harming yourself. I think something that I do is sometimes when I start getting involved in a discourse, I'll get to a certain point where, especially when the notifications start blowing up, just mute the thread. Yeah. And I did that yesterday, like before I went to bed, like the notifications were still going and I was like, it's still going. I was like, right, mute the conversation. Goodbye. I was like, that will still be taking along, I'm sure, and I'm sure in the morning we'll probably have like another 100 likes on it, and that's fine. And I just do not need to see it anymore because I think I've said everything I need to say. We've had a really great discussion, and that is for now yesterday's news. And I do not want it to be tomorrow as well. So I'm just like, it's over.
So my final tip for something I do when discourse is really getting to me is I know that like it can feel like you have to validate yourself to these people who are trying to invalidate you because none of us want to feel invalidated or put down or discouraged. But instead, I'll go and read something about bi history, or I'll go and engage in something positive about my bisexuality. So I'll read an article about bi activists and the amazing things they've done. or, watch a video, come and watch our videos. We're always positive about bisexuality, or listen to like an uplifting podcast about bisexuality. I really like Triple Bypass. And then like share that and, spread that positive message. And I know that like positivity isn't everything that we need to combat this hate and prejudice and discourse. We need education, but it's a nice way to just cleanse out your timeline and your notifications, is to be like, okay, enough of this. Here's an article about something really cool that happened in the bi scene in the 90s. Let's talk about this now instead.
Yeah, and I think that's a really positive way as well, is that instead of you putting in all of the work, someone has probably already written something about it. And, we write as well. So sometimes it's like someone might say something, it's like, I've already written a thing of this. I do not need to have to explain it all over again. Here's my article. I'm just going to plug that here. That's my piece on that. Goodbye. And I think the more you have as well, it's easier. Like, I know you've written stuff about the history of bi people, and I know there's Bi History, which is a great Instagram and Twitter account, and they have all kinds of stuff.
And Mel Reeve was on, she did a video with us. Watch that video, she was amazing.
Yeah. So just go and engage with that, just go and post something of that, be like, here's this. Like, I know when I was writing my thread, I was tagging you and Mel Reeve in that, and Bi History, Mel jumped on that and was like, here's a thing that I want to share, and it was the post that we mentioned on our video about the bisexuality trend or cop out. Just having those information that's already out there, you can just link that instead and go, here's my piece on that.
So here we are again. We've talked about discourse. We've talked about how to look after yourself. Hopefully, I pray that this is the last time we have to make this video, but I doubt it. Is there anything else you want to add, Vaneet?
No, I think just stay safe online, and make sure that you don't let discourse take over your whole life, because there's so much positivity being bisexual, and these people don't get to tell us what we can do. So happy bi mag.
Happy bi dyke. You can do and say whatever you want, and Vaneet and I will back you up. All right, love you guys. Stay safe in lockdown, and join us next time.
Yes, join us next time. See you.
Bye.